are endless. At this time, members of the family are going to give personal words.
On December 25th, 1902, Chaim and Chaya Steinschneider gave birth to a child, Lillian, the second of 8 children in Antonivka, Russia. In 1923, she came to America following her sister Miriam. On Frederick Street at the Honey's apartment, Ann Garshinsky introduced her to Carl, my grandfather. He was 29 from Russia, and she was 22. Together, in over 51 years of marriage, these two greenhorns made a life together. They had 2 children, Phyllis and Herbie. Phyllis, God. They had 2 children, Phyllis and Marilyn. And Phyllis and Marilyn were clearly the lights of their life. They were devoted, they were loving, they were caring, they were everything a mother should have in children, and they are everything children should have from a mother. They married two sons, and they were sons to her, Phyllis, to Herbie and Len, and together they started a group of grandchildren and great-grandchildren which were truly remarkable people and devoted to her. The dictionary defines devotion as unadulterated love and affection, and she had it. The children did not go to the Bubby's house because it was a requirement. It was not a way stop. It was a destination. It was a place where children slept over. It was where children went and studied. It was when children watched TV. It was watching her make food for us, make meatloafs and knishes and knedlachs and everything that a Jewish grandmother should have been and was. And she was it, to all of us, to each and every one of us. Even when the children would fight amongst each other, she was there as the matriarch. She was not Rose Kennedy, she was Bubby Lou, and she was everything that we always wanted. This morning, Lindsay asked me where Bubby was, and I knew the answer. She's in heaven.
I have to come up with the first words. I wore this tie, which is kind of garish and bright, just to add a bright note to today. And then I saw Rabbi Nelson here with a kind of bright tie, and that really made me happy. And also today is my garbage day, and God usually rains on my garbage day, but today he spared us. Bubby's early years were never clear to me. I know she lived in Europe, that she was, that her mother seemed to be a stern person to her, that she was raised a good bit by her own grandmother and her Bubby, and that she was even sleeping with her Bubby when her Bubby passed on. But she came to this country, married this traveling salesman, Zeddy Carl, and then they settled down here in Detroit. They had 2 kids. The first one was named Sister. The second one was named Harriet. And before that, they apparently she gave birth to 2 stillbirth sons. So Lenny and I came along and had to be compose yourself. That's why you give this to experts to do the thing. We had to be the sons, and fortunately, I was her favorite son-in-law, and so was Lenny. Over the years, she went through all the different chapters of an existence. She never to me complained about financial matters. I first dated Phyllis, and she was the factor in me. We'd have our fights, and she'd be there to calm things down and make sure this thing was a take. When I got it accepted to med school, she'd pack my lunches, and I had to drive out to Ann Arbor in the first few years. She took better care of me than Phyllis. She always did. And then when I was interning at Harper and I was surgical resident, she became, we found that she had a malignancy. I was there beginning my years of getting involved in surgery and family members, and I was in the operating room when a great surgeon was able to take out the tumor, not do a colostomy. And we never told her. She did, it lasted another half century. And she went on to have a lot of different things happen. She lost Zadie Carl, but she went from a little apartment on Monterey, a block away from where I lived, just across the little alley where I would sneak over to visit Phyllis, to for a family flat, and then they moved to Oak Park and they had their own home. It was a lovely home. Her Zadie Carl had set the tone for a dignified quality existence. When he became ill, and she took care of him in a manner which Phyllis carried on for her mother in Maryland. She kept her home and her independence, and then into her 90s, when she no longer could, she had to come and live with us. And she was very unhappy about leaving the home, but it worked out that being with us worked out good for us and for her. And I'm sort of rambling because I've got some other tales to tell here, but the final kick in the pants is when she had a stroke that made her lose her speech. And in a way, I was always sort of impertinent in my behavior. I would be as naughty to her as sometimes I was to the nuns at the hospitals. I could pat her on the dupa. As a physician, I've been in a wonderful field. I've been able to raise all these doctors, and I've had occasion to operate on Bubby on her wrist, and she broke her hip, and David and I were able to put it together. There's a story to that. I've rehearsed that one before. About half a year ago, Phyllis and Marilyn, who had been putting yeoman duty in, never getting away, had their usual ASID meeting up in High Point, and they barely got on the plane when Bubby fell and broke her hip. We didn't want to tell them because they were going to turn around and come right back. So David and I threw her in the van, took her over to St. Mary's and fixed her hip. Phyllis would call in and Marilyn to see how she's doing at home, and we'd say she's doing fine. They say, sure, she's taking her medicine. She's taking her medicine. Are people visiting her? I said, people are visiting her. We didn't tell her it was in the hospital. And then when we picked her up from the airport, I said as usual, I have to stop at the hospital, make some rounds. It was night. And when I pulled up, I said, you got to come up and see this lady. You wouldn't believe it. She looks so much like your mother. And at the time, when she entered the hospital, we thought she was 92. Well, some of the other older people in the family said, oh, no, wait, look, we know this. She's 95, so she aged 3 years in the hospital there. Anyways, fortunately for you, I'm forgetting a lot of the Megillas. Toward the end, I wanted to use words like matriarch, regal, elegant. Those were her characteristics. Bernie Kerner bought her a degree at one of his son's bar mitzvahs that said, I think, MB, medical bubby, or something like that, with all the medical people she was involved in raising. You know, I remember my two bubbies. My father's mother was a quiet, gentle lady, and I was fortunate enough as a kid to know her a tiny, tiny bit. And then Bubby Coam, my other bubby, who was a matriarch type situation in a family. And every child, every person is fortunate and unfortunate, depending on how they are in the scheme of things, whether they have a bubby or don't, whether their children get to be with a bubby. My children all were able to be blessed with that. Some of her grandchildren were able to know her. They're all here. The next batch of grandchildren that she would have had, it's too bad. Okay, the closing thing is, in the end, she would be at our house and she couldn't speak. People would come to visit, but she understood everything. She really had a great sense of humor, and she knew, and I would kibitz her a lot. And so in fact, maybe the last few words I had with her, which I clown around and do all the time, people would come over, and I'd go up to Bubby, and she'd know what I say, and I said to her, "Zor garnished," which means don't say anything. She couldn't speak anyway, and she knew it, and she laughed. So, but in Yiddish, "Zor garnished," you would say to the kids, you know, if there's somebody coming over and you don't want to open their mouth and say the wrong thing, say "Zor garnished." Well, okay, I'm going to turn this over. Some of the other people were brave enough to, a lot of people wanted to say something, some were actually brave enough to do it. Okay.
I want to say some things about my bubby before I can't say it to all of you. My bubby was the most wonderful person, and everybody here knows that she was like a mother to me, but she was a bubby, and she was a bubby to everybody in this room. All of my girlfriends, all the people I went through grade school and high school and college and medical school, all my friends to this day know the bubby. She was the bubby. She was the bubby to everybody, and her house was a warm place. If you had an argument,
Okay.
I want to say some things about my bubby before I can't say it to all of you. My bubby was the most wonderful person, and everybody here knows that she was like a mother to me, but she was a bubby, and she was a bubby to everybody in this room. All of my girlfriends, all the people I went through grade school and high school and college and medical school, all my friends to this day know the bubby. She was the bubby. She was the bubby to everybody, and her house was a warm place. If you had an argument with your husband, her house was a sanctuary. You went to her house, and she treated you like a queen. She treated you like a king. You would sit down, and she would take your feet and put them on her lap, and she would rub your feet and make you sit. And if you put your head down, she ran for a pillow, and then she ran and would make you a cup of tea and bring out some mish cookies, and later when she couldn't make the mish cookies, she bought strudel. She would go to the market and figure out what everybody that she loved liked. She never bought for herself. She never asked a thing for herself. This woman was the most unselfish person that ever existed. She was there for everybody. She provided love and warmth and a person to talk to, and she was wonderful, and we will miss her very much, but we have her in our house, and her neshama is with us.
It's true that everyone in this room is lucky because we were all blessed to have my Bubby as part of our lives. This is a woman who touched everybody who ever came in contact with her. And so each one of us knows what she means. The words are difficult to find to describe what a wonderful and terrific woman, matriarch, and model, and Bubby she was to all of us. My sister and I were talking a couple weeks ago whether she should take her youngest son with her on a vacation out west. She knew that my mom would be taking care of my Bubby, and so little Max would not be able to spend it with her Bubby if he stayed in town. And I thought to myself of all the vacations that I got to take to Bubby's. When my family would pull down the road in the station wagon, and they were going somewhere else, and I didn't understand it because I was there for a vacation. Everyone knows that my Bubby made each and every one of us feel good about ourselves. We felt loved, and we felt important. And you would spend the time at her house as a little boy. You would go to sleep with the chairs around your bed so you shouldn't fall out. You had breakfast in the morning, waited on hand and foot, and it didn't change over the years. When I was in medical school, when I had the sanctuary to study at my Bubby's house, to share those moments with her, I'm thankful I had those times. There were times we spent together. She took care of me. She took care of all of us. I think everyone knows that excitement and that swelling of pride and pleasure that we all felt as we drove down Burton Road, around that curve, knowing we were going to my Bubby's house. Knocking on the door, seeing her lift up the little curtain, the smile on her face, the little dance she would do when she opened the door as you shoved her out of the way to get to the refrigerator. The way you could always run to her for support when either your mom or dad were upset with you. Unconditional love, as Jerry said. She had it from every one of us. She gave it to every one of us. She would always hide those Mish cookies in the back of the freezer, camouflaged in tinfoil so no one else should have them, and you knew everyone else would. A place where each one of us took our friends to meet our Bubby because we were so proud to have this great woman in our lives. When she was in Europe, they called her Leica. At that time, she was a young woman, as she was until yesterday. I never looked in that face and did not see a beautiful young woman born years and years ahead of her time. She was young. She was vibrant to the last. She had a dignity and honor that we will all carry with us. And I know each one of us feels this way. Each one of the children, the grandchildren, and the great-grandchildren. I will miss her so very, very much. We will all miss her. And it is true, though, she will live on. She touched each and every one of us. We will carry her within us forever. I hope that as I continue on my journey, I can be as wonderful a person as she was, as good a sibling, a son, a father as Zadie. I hope I can be as good a Bubby to everyone I touch as she was to me. And we will all miss her.
Just one thing I want to clear up first, that I'm not a doctor yet, so just so that's set straight. I'm just so proud I'm overwhelmed. My mother and my Aunt Marilyn, they took care of my Bubby to the end. They gave her dignity and respect. They gave her an honor that is denied too many people today. And there's a reason they were able to do that. Before I get to that, I just want to just kind of like my dad ramble a bit for a moment. It's interesting to note that this woman was one of the last of the old country, the greenhorns. I'm an American, yeah? The last of them, and they had a certain color and character and style and a certain amount of shortening that they would use in everything they cooked, and a certain higher fat content, and a certain to everything they did. That as we become Americans, maybe we should remember there's something really nice there, something very, very warm. We all should just remember that. The story I want to just kind of tie in is that I now live at Bubby's house, and I live alone there, and Bubby's not there, and it's not the same. It's an empty house. I'm a medical student now, and I spend my time studying, and I miss my Bubby so much. I miss her so much, the warmth and the kind of things that my other brothers and sisters were able to have. I don't. I have a house, and I miss that so very, very, very much. Okay. When Bubby was in Europe, the one story she used to tell me always was about her grandmother. She was a tomboy. I'm a tomboy, yeah? And she got into a fight, I guess, with some boy in the neighborhood, and they got into it, and I guess the boy came to her house, and he threw a brick through their window. And that upset Bubby's mom a lot, so she sent her away to live with her grandmother, and she lived with her grandmother a lot, very close with her. And she used to sleep in the same bed. And one day she says she, got up as a little girl, and she would go jump on her grandmother, and she didn't move. She was gone. So that's one connection from one generation to the next. Now I sleep in Bubby's bed, I put my clothing in her drawers. Her skirts that hung in her closets, now some of my shirts, and I should say some of David's shirts, hang in those closets, although I don't know if he knows that. And she went to my house. She slept in my bed to the end. She took my clothing out of my drawers, and she put her things in. And let's hope none of my friends come in and look at my drawers and wonder, what I was wearing there. But it's a continuum. It's a connection. And if you look at where humans and mankind are at their greatest, they're at their greatest when they see themselves as all connected, when they see themselves as different parts of a body. And when they're at their worst is when they see themselves as separate. And in its extreme form, it's greed. In its best form, you are above the pettiness of humanity. And that's one thing Bubby always was. Call it unconditional love, call it tzedakah, call it whatever you want. She helped Stevie Acker. She helped my dad when he didn't have anything. They said that they would help her in turn. And it elevates us all to a level of greatness. And I think that's the one thing I am so proud, because when I see the way my mother took care, the way my father takes care, the way everyone takes care of each other, it's a thing that gives you the one moment in your life when you can stand back and say, okay, there's so much that's wrong with this world, but this is right. This is a model. This is something that I'm very, very proud of. So although I'm young, I'm only 25, and I didn't have as many of the younger years with Bubby and as many of the beautiful experiences that you get over those kind of years, I got more than I could have ever imagined for. Before I kind of drift off, I just want to tell one story, that one thing I can say I was proud I was able to give Bubby. Bubby, liked to drink coffee. Yeah, she used to like to have a cup of coffee, a cup of Sanka with a bit of creamer in it, And over the last couple of years, the fancy coffee shops have popped up all over town, And for all those years, she drank that instant coffee with that stuff. All those years, it was terrible. And I said to her, she was sitting around the house, not a lot to do, and I said, that's it, Bubby, we're going to go out. I've got to take you somewhere. And if you know Bubby, you couldn't get her to move. No, I'm going to sit. I don't want to move. I'm fine right here. And then she would go up and try to get you a cup of coffee. No, I insisted, we're going. So I got her dressed, I put her in the car, I drove her one of these coffee places, you know. And I got her one of these things called a latte, which is just, you know, really rich coffee, lots of cream, put some sugar in it. And she had some of that coffee, and she turned to me and she said, "Oh my God, this is the best cup of coffee I've ever had." And so I feel good about that. I was able to give my bubby the best cup of coffee she ever had. Thanks.
I just want to say a few things. Everybody says that Bubby is my Bubby, and Bubby was my Bubby too. I had a special relationship with Bubby. I never saw Bubby. I saw Bubby once a year for 2 days, 3 days, maybe the most. But whenever we got together, our relationship was the best. We looked into each other's eyes and we connected. And Bubby and I, our story goes back many years. I'm not going to ramble, but I want to say a few things. When I was 15 or 16, I started to become religious. And nobody in the family supported me but my Bubby. And my Bubby was there, and she loved everything I was doing. She thought it was the most beautiful thing in the world. And she, even when I went to Israel, she was my guiding light, because I always remembered Bubby's story, how she picked up from her country, and she went to a new country, and she built her family and everything else. And I always remembered that when I went to Israel, that I left my family in my country, and I went to Israel to build my family, though I'm still trying to build my family. One day will happen. But every single day, Bubby was in my mind and in my heart, and she never ever left my heart for a single day. She was in my prayers every single morning. Every day that she was sick, I went to the kotel and I davened for her and made a special mishabera for her whenever she was sick. And so this Pesach, when I was here, Bubby fell down and she broke her hip. And it was the first time in over maybe 15 years that I was able to sit with Bubby for more than one day. And Bubby and I put on her makeup for her, and I helped her to the bathroom, and I was there for her from the morning to night. And I would look in her eyes, and she would look in my eyes, and we connected. And all I can say is that from that week with Bubby, I learned so much. Bubby only had things to teach. If you looked at her and you watched her, she had what to teach. She taught you respect. She taught you how to treat another person. She taught you that you were the best person in the world, and that your respect was the greatest thing that you could ever hold in your hands. And that's what I learned from Bubby. And that I pray that I'll be able to take with me for the rest of my life. The only other thing I did learn from Bubby is I finally learned how to make her kamish cookies. In the end, I would send them to her, and she would taste them, and she said they tasted like hers. So Bubby was special. She was one of the best Bubbies in the whole world, and we'll never forget her, and she'll always be with us in our hearts. And everything that she taught us and everything that she was will always go with us for the rest of our lives.
Bubby Lou, come wipe me. I remember saying those words
A lot of us remember saying those words. Fortunately, she responded every time. I do want to clarify something my dad said. I was her favorite. And actually, everybody who was with her felt they were her favorite. Because she pulled you aside and talked to you, and you would think you were her favorite, and you wanted to be. Everybody wanted to be her favorite. You can hear from what everybody said. She was a wonderful woman. And when I was sitting there and everybody's coming by and, giving their condolences, I am struck with how much love there is here. Everybody who met her loved her. Everybody doesn't need me or anybody else to tell them what they think. They've all had the same experience. Everyone's a little bit individual and personal, and we all loved her. It was almost a competition who loved her most. I loved her more than you. She loved you more than me. That's why everybody wanted to be her favorite. And she really touched anybody who came by her. Great things have been said about her, and they're all true. The stories that Jerry told and all the grandchildren told, they want to say them and feel them. And I have wonderful stories and memories of her that I won't go on too much about. But I'll say that she was an elegant, beautiful person, and her hair always looked great, which was very important to her. And she touched everybody the way she did. What I want to point out is, even at the end when she lost her speech, everybody who really had all the contact with her, they were hurt the most in that you used to go to Bubby for help and advice all the time, through everybody's good days and bad days. And when she lost the speech, that was taken away from us. She couldn't tell us what she used to tell us before. She could communicate a lot of things, and you had to sort of rely on what you knew about. But it came to the point that even at the end, we had a lady take care of her named Sally, who fell in love with her, and never once heard her voice. Never once did she speak to her, and yet her presence made her fall in love with her. She was Bubby, not Grandma. She was Bubby. There was only one Bubby. She was it, and she was a beautiful person. That's why we're here. We all know that, and we all feel that. I have about an hour and a half worth of other things I want to say, but I'm not going to say it.
I am but a small branch on a great family tree that I'm very happy to be a part of. And I see through us, she has reached out and touched all of you. When I was young in the 60s, some men were going off to war, and I was going off to Bubby's house. Some people went off to Expo 67, and I went to heaven. I have some memories of her that I used to resent because I wasn't going off to vacations, but I see now, at this point in my life, they're truly my memories of love that I always treasure. I used to watch her shave Zadie Carl every day. She used to let me put as much sugar on my oatmeal as I wanted. Whenever I brought a girl around, she would come to me later and say, "That's not for you, that's for you." She used to come and pull me aside and say, what's with Jerry? What's with Steve? What are we going to do with them? When I used to babysit for Zadie Carl to let Bubby get away, he used to call out to her all the time. He would yell out, Lil, where are you? And I used to say to him, "She's not here right now, Bubby. She's not here right now, Zadie. She's coming back now. Lil's coming back." And I can't say that anymore. All I can say is, Lil's not coming back.
So, you guys are all the favorites. But I was the oldest. And she couldn't say that to any of you but me. So I wrote this because I don't think I could do it extemporaneously at all. Oi, how many times did I hear that from Bubby? I don't remember what time was the first, but it probably was shortly after my brother Jerry and I moved into Zadie and Bubby's house on Burton 32 years ago. Had to stay there until our house in Oak Park was finished. We would get up in the morning, get served a most wonderful breakfast, and get taken by school by Zadie. It must have been one of the first bed and breakfasts in Oak Park. Oi, she was a rock to me. She took care of business. It wasn't whether it was good or bad, or hard or easy. If it needed to be done, she would do it. Does every family have that backstop, that foundation, that example of love for family and commitment to caring for ones you love? We did, didn't we? And there were no conditions, no negotiations. She gave from her core. She came from her heart. When anyone needed something, I never heard her say no. Maybe I don't remember it, or maybe it just never happened that she said no. I only know what I saw, what I felt, and what she told me. There were stories that made her cry, and she would get emotional about her family in Europe, about things that went on with family in Michigan. But Bubby was just as quick to get teary-eyed over happy things, heartfelt good things, how much she loved the Zadie, how she felt the love from Auntie Phil and Mom, Dad, and Uncle Herbie. And oh yeah, once or twice, I think I remember, she mentioned the kids. And kids were kids, whether it was her grandchildren, the kinder, she would say, or the great-grandchildren. Give her a minute, and within the first 15 seconds, boy, the children, right? Each one of us who knew Bubby will have our own little remembrance, something special you feel for someone, like you had them all to yourself. And no one else could even fathom the connection. And that's how she made me feel, and I guess that's how she made a lot of people feel. That we were the only two people in the world. How many times have you heard that today? And the time we were sharing was ours for however long, and that everything would always be okay. It's not as long as it looks. Being the oldest, the first she would say, I was always a little embarrassed by that intention, but maybe it wasn't the truth, but she made me feel good. And can you ever have enough people in your life who make you feel good about yourself? Oh, I will miss her. I will miss ringing her doorbell and having her peer through the window to see who it is. And it's so interesting how we all have some of the same memories, just in different little times and days. Her face lighting up at the times of an unexpected visitor. I will miss hearing the same story over and over and over again. And did I mention her honey cake? Oh, the best. But her house was a mess. How could she live like that? I'm kidding, of course. Her house was immaculate. It didn't matter who trooped through, kids, muddy feet. Even when Zadie was sick, the house was pristine. I have to jump to the present. The past was wonderful, and I ache inside from good feelings. And Tuesday night, as she left, I just felt so good. The time was coming, and I laid on the bed, accepting what might happen that night. We were all there, every combination of siblings, cousins, aunts, and uncles. And as I blinked my eyes, the chairs would move, and another would come and hold her hand and kiss her, and there were no barriers to expressing our love, were there? And I can never think of any lyrics or songs, but as I wrote this, I remembered a very old Beatles melody, and in the end, the love you give is equal to the love you make, and Bubby gave love, and she made love, and we were all very lucky, weren't we?
Actually, I'm the oldest. I was obviously the first one to meet Marilyn, and I was never accepted by Bubby. I was Shagets, and she wouldn't let me in the house. And Phyllis had to go and yell at her and scream at her and say, he's not a Shagets, he's a Jewish boy, let her see Marilyn. And it was kind of a funny thing. I had to sneak up the back stairs to see Marilyn because Mrs. Pont was there playing the piano with Marilyn and Phyllis, and I couldn't see Marilyn until Mrs. Pont got done with Marilyn and Phyllis, so I had to wait in the back stairs on Monterey, and there's just so many memories, and you've heard a lot of them today. I can't really expand upon them. The kids, all the grandchildren, they could tell it much better than I can. She was one of a kind. She was, as everyone said, she was Bubby Lou, and there's no way to describe that or define it or to try to put some kind of perspective to it. She was an individual that loved everybody, no matter how bad you were or how good you were. She loved you all, just as everybody else did. And she was just one of a kind.
Please rise for the memorial prayer.
Shochein b'maromim hametzei menucha nechona